What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam. I am your host. There is a big product from the 90s that's making a comeback, and in this video, I am going to talk about that product and some of my thoughts on the release. Everybody knows the major sports card companies. You got Topps, you've got Panini, you've got Upper Deck. I guess you could consider a top one because they have the NHL license, but there are still a few others out there that make cards, and even though they are unlicensed and they don't have logos, and sometimes they don't hold the same amount of value, there are other companies that make cards, and Leaf is one of them. And Leaf announced this week that they are bringing back a pro set card for Trevor Lawrence, and I think this is a big deal, and it may not necessarily be because of just this card specifically, but I think bringing back some of these older sets, I think are good experiments for some of these companies to do. And I think if you're going to try anything, honestly, with Trevor Lawrence, I think that if you're football and if you're trying to get into football, this is going to be the year where Trevor Lawrence is going to do to the hobby for football what I think Zion did for basketball. And so I think that football could see a pretty crazy year when it comes to the either growth or some of the sales, because like I said, Trevor Lawrence, and I put this in an Instagram post a couple months ago, and I think I said on the podcast, I was saying that Trevor Lawrence is the biggest prospect to come out of college since Zion, and people were like, you mean since like a year ago? But I think maybe the point that I was trying to make was that, think about the amount of hype that Zion had coming out of the draft and being that number one overall pick going to the Pelicans. Think about how much hype there was around him, and then I think that there's almost just as much hype around Trevor Lawrence because in his freshman year he wins the national championship. He only loses, I think, 2 games in his whole college career, and one of them was in the national championship, and then the other one was in the semifinal for the national championship. So I think that Trevor Lawrence coming out this year, you're going to see a lot of companies experimenting with football a little bit more. Now, I don't think Panini will necessarily because they have that exclusive license, but I think Leaf, for example, they do have some college stuff that they come out with. There are some XRC cards that they come out with, some pre-rookie cards, but I don't think they have any type of exclusive licensing with college. So that's why you're going to see, if you're buying this pro set card, it's going to have a photoshopped jersey on it. And I think, the unlicensed stuff, and this is kind of the overall point that I have. If this card does good, I think that means that there could be other sets or other products that are very similar to this, and other companies could kind of jump on this wave of potentially coming out with unlicensed products. And I think people overlook the fact that Panini has unlicensed baseball products. Now, if you're looking at the hobby right now, baseball is still probably one of the top sports, if not the top sport. I would say if it's not number one, it's number 2, and then basketball is number 1. But I just think the size and the history that baseball has behind it, for me, makes it that it is probably, I think it's number 1 in the hobby. And I think if you were to ask most people how they got started into sports cards, I think that baseball cards is probably one of the ways they got started. And then they switched over to basketball because maybe there was some more profit, or maybe they just like basketball more. But I think Panini is showing that unlicensed products have potential in the market. They come out with a bunch of different unlicensed products for baseball, and I think other sports too. I'm not 100% sure. I think they do have a hockey product, but I don't think that's not as big. But I think the fact that baseball is the sport that Panini is using and showing that there's a market, I've talked about this in the past. I would love for Topps to come out with a Topps Chrome product for basketball or for football, but I think just the fact that Panini is showing that there is a market is a much bigger deal, I think, and especially with baseball, is a much bigger deal than I think maybe people realize. And I know what people will say. They don't like, if you look at anything, any sports card person talking about Donruss for baseball or Optic for baseball or Prism for baseball, they say they don't like the unlicensed product. But the sports card industry, these companies are trying to make money. So Panini's not going to come out with a product that they think isn't going to sell or doesn't sell. If Panini Baseball wasn't a popular product, and I think as sports card collectors, we run into this issue where we think that we are the target market for some of these companies. And I think it's very similar to sports games like 2K and Madden, where in Call of Duty as well, but like they're making the game for the casual person. They're not making the game for the hardcore people. And I think that's one of the big issues with games that people run into. But I think if you look at these products, like they're not necessarily making the products for us, like the people who are the hardcore collectors, because if they were, they wouldn't come out with Panini Baseball. Like Panini wouldn't come out with any type of unlicensed product. So it's clear that business model, that type of vertical within Panini and within the unlicensed products is a possibility. So I think that, if Upper Deck, or I guess Topps could do this as well, but I think Upper Deck, if they were to come back with like a Fleer basketball product, that would bring them into, I think, a lot of relevancy. And I put out this post about, I think LeBron is going to buy Upper Deck, and then I got some feedback that LeBron and Jordan and Gretzky all have part ownership, but I couldn't find the info. So, if you have this info and you know where I can find it, just leave it in the comments, because like I said, I've been looking on the internet, and I can't, usually it's fairly simple to find, especially if you're searching for something for LeBron or Jordan, like it's fairly simple to find, but I couldn't find any info on that. Like, I know they have the exclusives with those athletes, but I don't know. So I think it would be cool, because you've seen a lot of these companies that were around in the 90s that got bought by these bigger entities. So like Fleer got bought by Upper Deck, Donruss got bought by Panini. I think Pro Set, I'm not 100% sure if it was just one company that got bought by that got bought by Leaf. And I think that these types of moves, I think, it's not the move itself that I think is a big deal. I think it's the potential for what the move could create. Like I said, the unlicensed product, the older set, like Pro Set was pretty big in the 90s. Like if you look back at the Barry Sanders, there's Bill Belichick card that I've talked about actually on this channel and on the podcast in the past. And I think that bringing back some of these old sets will be interesting. And I've also kind of been developing a take about like I said, I think that with the companies not making the products for hardcore collectors, I think that this type of move could be a bad one, because I think if you were collecting, and I think if you look at the broad scope of things, especially in the 90s, like the amount of people who were around back then that collected, that still collect now, I think it's gone up in the past year. But I do think a lot of people got burned from the 90s and what they were doing in the 90s from all these card companies and all this type of stuff. And I also just think that the big difference between the 90s and now is the internet and the fact that eBay and all of these things. Like, you weren't going into a card shop and just trusting that the owner of the card shop was pricing their cards correctly, or you weren't just trusting that Beckett Magazine was pricing the cards correctly. So I think there are some big differences, but I do like the fact that Leaf is going to be coming out with this Pro Set card. I think Leaf has been a very interesting kind of company. They came out with like the COVID card, which I thought was pretty wild, and they actually shipped it. So that there's a card that has like a picture of the and I don't remember what the total print run of it was, but I thought that was like a super wild card. And I honestly think like it's the same as like people collecting cards of like maybe players who weren't the best people, like people who maybe collect like OJ Simpson cards, or like people who collect like Aaron Hernandez cards. Like, it may be in that same kind of category, and obviously just because it's a really weird card to want, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe people will want it in the future. I don't know for sure, but like that's sort of, Leaf is kind of trying to come in. And they also do get, like, autographs of these players. So I don't know if there's going to be any Trevor Lawrence autographs in this product. And it is going to be a print-on-demand product as well. So, like, if you look at it from that standpoint, like, if a lot of people want this card, there's a chance that this may be... And I think this is also interesting. I've talked about this from a print-on-demand standpoint. This is kind of the last point of the video and the podcast part. But the print-on-demand aspect of this card, I think, makes it interesting for a couple reasons. It makes it interesting because I think people may buy the card not understanding print on demand, and that's what happened with Topps 2020 project, the Project 2020. People didn't understand the concept of the print on demand. So they're going to print as many of these cards as there are. But I also think that this is going to be an opportunity to buy one of the cheaper Trevor Lawrence cards. Like, I think I make this comparison, and I don't think it's exactly the same, but like the draft cards or the Panini Instant or the Topps Now product, like you're getting a guaranteed rookie card at what essentially would probably be one of the cheapest prices for a player like Trevor Lawrence. So, and it's not a pro card. Like I don't know if Leaf is going to come back with any type of pro set and come back with like a professional product that is like photoshopped jerseys for the pros. But if they did, I think there is a possibility that it could be a good set, or it could be an opportunity for any type of company that wants to come in. And maybe there's a company that wants to make cards. Like there are smaller companies out. I don't necessarily think this set is going to be in the same kind of conversation as like when UFC switched from Panini to Topps. But I think this is the type of move that, like I was talking about earlier, where it's not necessarily the move that I think is most interesting. It's the potential for what could happen if it's good. Like if there are good things that happen from this set. So Panini grabbing UFC, like I've talked about in the past. I talked this on another video where Panini grabbing UFC, the exclusive licensing, I think could open the door for companies to come in and want to do exclusive licensing for change the exclusive license. I don't think MLB would ever switch, but like for football or for basketball, I just think that if we're seeing the possibility that a company or a sport could do this, that it opens the door for there to be more sports to change their exclusive, or maybe not even come out with an exclusive license. So I think it's definitely going to be, I think it's a cool set. I may or may not order, I'm not 100% sure, but I think, the next steps after this set comes out, like after we see the print run and after we see kind of who bought the cards, and maybe once they start getting graded and we'll see all that type of stuff, I think it's going to be super cool to kind of follow up on this story in a few weeks and kind of see where we're at and see if anything has really changed from this specific set coming out. Thank you all for watching this video. Make sure if you enjoyed that you hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.